On the 23rd, Mr. Hunt received by a special messenger a letter from Mr. Emmanuel Lisa, the leading partner of the Missouri Fur Company and the gentleman who rendered him so many services at St. Louis. He had left that place with a large party 3 weeks after Mr. H, and having heard rumors of hostile intentions on the part of the Sioux, a much dreaded tribe of Indians, and made great exertions to overtake him, that they might pass through the dangerous part of the river together. Mr. H, however, was justly suspicious of the Spaniard and pushed on. At the village of the Poncas, about a league south of the river Keycourt, he stopped only long enough to procure a supply of dry buffalo meat. On the morning of the 25th, it was discovered that Jones and Carson had deserted. They were pursued, but in vain. The next day, three white men were observed in 2 canoes descended the river. They proved to be 3 Kentucky hunters, Edward Robinson, John Hoback, and Jacob Risner. They had also passed several years in the upper wilderness and were now on their way home, but willingly turned back with the expedition. Information derived from these recruits induced Mr. Hunt to alter his route. Hitherto he had intended to follow its course, pursued by Messrs. Lewis and Clark, ascending the Missouri to its forks and thence by land across the mountains. He was informed, however, that in so doing, he would have to pass through the countries of the Blackfeet, a savage tribe of Indians exasperated against the whites on account of the death of one of their men by the hands of Captain Lewis. Robinson advised a more southerly route. This would carry them over the mountains, about where the headwaters of the Platte and the Yellowstone take their rise. A much more practicable pass than that of Lewis and Clark. To this counsel Mr. Hunt agreed and resolved to leave the Missouri at the village of the Arickaras, at which they would arrive in a few days. On the 1st of June, they reached, quote-unquote, the Great Bend of the river, which here winds for about 30 miles around a circular peninsula, the neck of which is not above 2,000 yards across. On the morning of June the 3rd, the party were overtaken by Lisa, much to their dissatisfaction. The meeting was, of course, far from cordial, but an outward appearance of civility was maintained for 2 days. On the 3rd, a quarrel took place, which was near terminating seriously. It was, however, partially adjusted, and the rival parties coasted along opposite sides of the river and sighted each other. On the 12th of June, they reached the village of the Arickaras, between the 46th and the 47th parallels of north latitude, and about 1,430 miles above the mouth of the Missouri. In accomplishing thus much in his journey, Mr. Hunt had not failed to meet with a crowd of difficulties, at which we have not even hinted. He was frequently in extreme peril from the large bodies of the Sioux, and at one time it was merely an accident alone which prevented the massacre of the whole party. At the Arickaras village, our adventurers were to abandon their boats and proceed westward across the wilderness. Horses were to be purchased from the Indians, who could not, however, furnish them in sufficient numbers. In this dilemma, Lisa offered to purchase the boats, now no longer of use, and to pay for them in horses, to be obtained at the fort belonging to the Missouri Fur Company, and situated at the main villages about 150 miles further up the river. A bargain was made, and Messrs. Lisa and Crook went up for the horses, returning with them in about a fortnight. At the Arickaras village, which we understand, Mr. Hunt engaged the services of one Edward Rose. He enlisted as an interpreter when the expedition should reach the country of the Apsarokas, or Crow Indians, among whom he had formerly resided. On the 18th of July, the party took up their line of march. They were still insufficiently provided with horses. The cavalcade consisted of 82, most of them heavily laden with Indian goods, beaver traps, ammunition, and provisions. Each of the parties was mounted. As I took leave of Aurora, the veterans of Lisa's company, as well as Lisa himself, predicted the total destruction of our adventurers. Amid the innumerable perils of the wilderness, to avoid the Blackfeet Indians, a ferocious and implacable tribe of which we have before spoken, the party kept a southwestern direction. This route took them across some of the tributary streams of the Missouri and through immense prairies bounded only by the horizon. Their progress was at first slow. Mr. Crooks was falling sick. It was necessary to make a litter for him between two horses. On the 23rd of the month, they encamped on the banks of a little stream named Big River, where they remained several days, meeting with a variety of adventurers. Among other things, they were enabled to complete their supply of horses from a band of Cheyenne Indians